Hello and welcome to the Sac Off podcast. We are back after with class and say, oh, but we're back. The bottom line is we're back. Kings aren't back there. They're not. They're disappointing, but we're still going to talk about them. And as always, joining me is Oscar Hazel, my good friend. How are you doing tonight or today or whatever time it is there?
It's morning, 5:30. But we're 500 since All-Star break, so it could be worse. The 2 wins are against the Nuggets, though, so
yeah.
What can you do? But at least there's good news, like Utah are slipping, the Rockets are slipping, so that 8th spot is like only, I think, 4 games out, maybe 4.5 games out. And that's of the Rockets, and then Utah are 3.5 games out. So it could be worse, but obviously, if the Kings could win, that would be beneficial.
Yeah, I'm like, I don't know, part of me still doesn't. The best thing for the Kings may not be getting that 8th seed.
Yeah, I guess, you get kind of into that point where is there a risk of them keeping George Karl? Should we start with like the James Ham kind of quote from Caspi pre-game? Because that was kind of interesting in terms of, so basically James Ham said, or was quoting Caspi saying, he sent a text to everyone saying, oh, we've got to start playing better now, because if we don't start playing better now, we're not going to be playing with each other soon, and we enjoy playing with each other. So I assume, I'd imagine Caspi and Boogie would still be around next year regardless.
Guaranteed.
So then maybe that's more aimed at Rondo and Gay, and Ben. That seems to be kind of like the core. Like Ben and Gay seem to be pretty close. Caspi and Cousins obviously are. Gay seems to be close with everyone in the whole NBA, and then Rondo obviously is close with Gay and Cousins at least. So I'd imagine that's kind of like the group they're talking about wanting to keep together. So that was kind of interesting, and maybe that's just like, oh, we need to look like we can operate well together for the next coach as well, perhaps. But what was your takeaway from that quote?
I mean, like, part of it's just nice to hear, because we're talking about a team where there seemed to be a lot of friction previous years between. There was stuff about Isaiah, but I don't know, that might have been between more Isaiah and management. But there's been issues in the past between guys. With people having an issue with Cousins. So to hear Caspi say this is the best group they've had, and they like playing with each other. I mean, you kind of want to seize on that and take advantage of at the same time. Like, this team's got to show improvements next year.
And we've kind of had similar kind of quotes the whole time. Like DeMarcus has kept saying, like, there's no problems with like the players and we're tight, stuff along those kind of lines. So it's not anything new. I think we've kind of known that this has been, at least the players get along, which has not always been the case. But yeah, it's maybe just a realization that it's not going to last forever, and they have to kind of take it into their own hands, because and maybe it's more a sign of like the players are just having to take it upon themselves because they just don't trust the coaching staff.
Yeah.
And on the coaching side, like change-wise, I think we saw kind of a bit more post-ups in this. The beginning of games, we're seeing more post-ups, and then as the second half of games, we're not really seeing it at all. We even saw 2 Willie Cauley-Stein post-ups that didn't materialize into anything, but at least it's signs of they're thinking about it or they're trying to implement it more. But that's always the issue, is when you get into the clutch, you go back to what you know best and what you've been doing the most and comfortable with. And that's the Kings, that's not posting up. So, I mean, it's getting better, but with like 5 games left to go, it's just too little too late, really.
Yeah. I mean, as you mentioned, like, once they get into that flow, it's the same old Kings, and I mean, that's just not. We've seen where it's got them.
And shall we? I mean, shouldn't really talk too much on the Nuggets games because I mean, it's partly just Moutier really struggled, and when a team that can't punish you on the pick and roll with their point guard, that really helps the Kings, and so that's kind of what happened with Denver anyway. And then obviously their bigs getting in foul trouble early when DeMarcus was posting up, and those games kind of got a bit close when they got away from posting up. But I guess with the Clippers and the game tonight, kind of similar where the Kings got off to a really good start in both of them, then gave away pretty big runs, and then it was even the Clippers game, and I think I'd say this game as well, they had a good start to the second half, and then just completely fell apart. And it's just like they give up loads of like open jumpers and lots of them. I mean, and this game, like it shouldn't have been as close as it was most of that game. Just like Ibaka was just fumbling so much, he couldn't do anything. He had a really rough game, and that wasn't a huge amount to do with anything the defense was doing other than just lots of bodies in the paint the whole time.
Well, yeah, OKC had 21 turnovers tonight. It's just
it wasn't the prettiest game, but they scored over 29. So 29 in the first quarter, 32 in the second, 33 in the third, 37 in the fourth, and that kind of mirrors the same thing as the Clippers game, where it's like 30 in the first quarter, 34 in the second and third, and then 19 in the fourth when the game was over. But it's like, so when the Kings were in both of those games in the first half, it's just because Boogie could score that much. And then once you can't just continue keeping up the pace scoring wise, then it hurts. I think that's kind of like, there's no way for them to stop scoring. I think in that Clippers game, there was like a 20-0 run and not a single post up. And I think that's kind of where there's not someone to take kind of responsibility and slow down the game. Like to me, if you start like an 8 or 10 run against you try and like get something to like slow down the game, get an easy point, like just put it into DeMarcus in the post, and you're either going to get a foul or score, or like you're not going to give up kind of an easy transition as well, because you're going to have your wings above the break instead of DeMarcus above the break as your last defender. So that was just kind of like frustrating coaching things, but I think like we can't really expect much to change now coaching wise. It's just how many games can the talent break through. I forgot there was a Spurs game as well. So okay, they're 2-3 since All-Star break, so that was good. And then that Spurs game, it was just the second quarter where they just couldn't buy a bucket. That really killed them.
Yeah. I mean, should we talk about the fact that, I mean, we continue to have the issue where in times where Boogie or Gay or whatever should probably be pulled, but they're kept in the game?
Maybe that's just Carl. Like we've seen a couple of games where it felt like it was completely over, and then they've come back to get close or win. So maybe that's kind of looming in Carl's mind, those games, or maybe he just doesn't even know what the time is or what the score is. Like he seems to be pretty checked out. Like it's pretty scary, some of the stuff, and even just in terms of like an hour before the game saying Rondo's out, and then 2 minutes later he's changed to probable, and then 10 minutes later he's playing. So those are just kind of like interesting things where it's like maybe he just doesn't know what's going on, and that kind of like the Rondo thing's just really interesting. It just screams like he has no idea he has very little control of what's going on.
I think that goes back to, we talked about this before the year, so it was with Willie Cauley-Stein, and with like because it was in training camp, and Carl, it was something about how he doesn't really talk to The trainers, like, it's, I'm trying to remember the exact quote, but it's something we talked about before the season.
It may have been that he didn't really know what was going on until he took
Yeah.
the day when he was hurt and he sat on the bench, and then he like realized what everyone was shouting at him about, or like shouting for him, like what they were calling, and he didn't really. Maybe it's that. So maybe they're just not great at like teaching, and maybe that's why Carl has always struggled with younger players, because he doesn't know how to communicate to them how he wants. Like he's not good at initiating learning, so he's good at kind of, maybe he's good at finding player strengths that are developed and accentuating them or giving them freedom. Like he's given freedom to Rondo and DeMarcus to where they're doing things they haven't for a while, or like ever, in terms of DeMarcus's like shooting from the perimeter and making plays off the dribble. Rondo's shooting, I guess you could say, although today he was really bad. Maybe that's kind of something with the hands, like all his shots were coming up real short. You could say, like, I don't know if he's really helped Caspi. Should we talk about Caspi? And like his role's been really brought back. Just kind of strange. You'd think with like Gay out, he would be starting, but James Anderson started. Why do you think? Like it just seems strange that Caspi would be in his bad books. Can you think of any reasons why? I'm just going to get up his split, see if anything comes up. But I mean, it's interesting that he went, like, of all the options to go to start at the 4, we've gone with Quincy Acey, and I like Quincy Acey, but I think I would rather start either DeMarcus or, Willie Cauley-Stein or Caspi at the 4 with DeMarcus. And then if you want to play Acey and Kufos together if you want to stay big. One thing, just looking at Caspi splits, he was under 40% shooter for January, under 30% shooter for February. So maybe that's partly it, but he's only taken 34 shots in February. So maybe that's part, but I mean, Marco has such a long leash and has been shooting that all year. So I don't really see that as, and his defensive rating has been pretty awful, 114. Maybe he's just been injured, and maybe that's kind of why he's been playing less minutes. See if I can't find average minutes per game, but so maybe that's partly, maybe it's more of an injury thing. That's kind of why we're seeing his defensive rating. It's like really, it's 114 for February. It's been around 108 to 106 every other month. So maybe that's partly it. And his defensive rating is 99, where it's always been over 105. So that could possibly be kind of an issue. So maybe that's nothing. Maybe that's just kind of, he's hurt and they're giving him more time off. But considering they don't really give, I guess they can't really give time off to DeMarcus, because if you do that, you lose unless you play the Bucks.
Yeah. Like you were just saying with the minutes, like, obviously small sample size, just 3 games post the All-Star break. But like before the All-Star break, Caspi was at like 29 per game. He's dropped 10 minutes right now. He's at 18.
Yeah, so maybe it's just an injury. Maybe it's an injury. Maybe it's he's just shooting poorly. So there, but then I think that's kind of the thing we've seen with like Ben's not shooting, like has really fallen off shooting wise since the start of the year. And I don't think the way in which to get someone back shooting is to like get them better shots, not just punish them. And so he's kind of done the opposite with Marco Bellinelli, and not in terms of like getting better shots, but just keep giving him the same bad shots and hoping something changes, which obviously it hasn't. It seems with both Caspi and Ben, just their roles have really come back, like have been reduced since January, or just like Carl's confidence in them has completely disappeared. and we haven't really seen. It felt like we haven't seen Caspi and Gay play as much together as we did early in the year, which seemed to be like a good forward combination. And maybe that's partly like the rise of Willie Colley-Stein. I'm not sure. As dog is having like some weird dreams behind me. So sorry if you hear like hiccups from a dog. Should we look forward to the next couple of, I guess, the next 5 or 4 games?
Yeah, and just real quickly, because I was determined to find it. So, and this is something we did talk about before the season. It was when during training camp, Colley-Stein tweaked his ankle and wasn't able to practice, and George Karl kind of got pissed at him, saying, "Injuries are not my forte. I don't handle them well." So, it's just, yeah.
And that's a huge red flag, and especially as like George Karl is like being kind of touted as an analytical coach or like a modern forward-thinking coach. I think the Kings are taking the least amount of threes, they're allowing the most threes, which is like a very non-analytical approach, just to like pure maths.
That's the anti-analytics.
And then like so much analytics is about injury prevention and tracking injuries and like trying to like the best way to get the best performance out of your players is them being healthy and being able to be on the court or field or whatever sport they're doing. So the fact he's just completely, I mean, there's ways in which you can say it's not your forte and then trust others. But I don't think we're seeing that in terms of the on-court application. And just like in terms of like him saying that about a player in practice, obviously he's trying to push players to practice through things. And then we've seen that kind of like Rondo and this thing, and like even how when Rondo and Gay had MRIs, with Rondo's it like brought up something completely separate as well. So maybe that's partly on the player for like trying to hide stuff. Obviously it's a pretty important year for Rondo because he wants to get a big check. But yeah, that's always kind of concern. I think we kind of noted like that's kind of like a very anti contemporary technology answer whilst talking about injuries. But maybe we'll get kind of some more on that. I know Vivek is going to be at Sloan in I think a week, so maybe I think that would probably be more about talking about the arena than anything basketball wise, but you never know.
Let's see.
Should we go to the road trip then?
Yeah.
So the so I think this is like their name brand teams, but most couple of them are on the slide. The first game is against the Grizzlies, who obviously don't have Marcus Gasol at the moment. I think they've done pretty well. They're 6-4 at the moment. So, but they just had Brandon Wright go down as well. So they're literally Yeah, he's out for the season. I think he had a meniscus tear, I believe. I think that was yesterday. So they're going to be really thin and big. So if DeMarcus is healthy and can kind of do any of the damage he was doing today, you'd assume there's going to be a lot of Zebo at center. So that could be kind of an interesting game, which maybe they can steal.
Yeah, and I think like tonight, I mean, Chris Anderson's their starting center right now.
Okay, so yeah, you'd be able to take advantage of that. And they don't really have, they've kind of got so many moving pieces. Maybe you can take advantage of that kind of early on. But we'll see. And then, I guess the Zebo Conley pick and roll could hurt. Zebo's the perfect player to hurt the Kings in terms of just a mid-range shooter on bigs, or they switch him on to Collison like we saw Durant on Collison a handful of times today. So maybe that's kind of something we see. It'll be interesting to see how with how they defend him. I guess we glanced over Willie Cauley-Stein defending Durant.
Yeah.
Maybe we see like Durant. I guess like Zebo's slightly easier defend for Willie Cauley-Stein, although slightly different in terms of he can post him up a bit more. Were you surprised that Carl went to Willie Cauley-Stein on Durant so much, considering kind of the lack of perceived trust, just in terms of like sheer like volume of playing time given to Willie Cauley-Stein? Is at least that's kind of like promising, right?
I mean, it was odd tonight. Like there were so many times that it would have worked even better before this. Where like I don't like a test run where you can see how it works out, and you just throw them out there against one.
I mean, I guess the argument is there was no Rudy Gay, and they tried James Anderson first, so maybe that's the argument of like, okay, like Carl, it wasn't something Carl was like planning to do. It was just like, okay, well, and they were playing Durant at the 4 basically as well for spells.
Yeah.
So maybe it was just like, oh, this is the matchup we've got. We're not going to change. And they just don't have the wings unless they're going to play Caron Butler.
Yeah, like the more you say that, the more I kind of buy into it. Because like with Carl, I don't think he trusts rookies enough for them in that situation unless he has no other choice.
And we know he rarely knows who the opposition is, considering his Zach Lowe comments that the game cut down for 0 points.
Yeah.
And I guess another positive with Willie Cauley-Stein, he's hitting free throws. I think he's 80% for this month after being kind of around 50% for the whole year. So that's really good. And he's been hitting like those 16-footers. So his shots are looking good. I'm hoping we get to see him like take a couple of corner threes like we saw at pre-draft. And because he should get quite a lot of space, so it shouldn't be like a hard shot for him. If he can like hit them in air, like not being guarded, you should be able to hit them.
Yeah. I'm like one thing we've seen with Will, you mentioned the free throws, is like that it's steadily increased. He's gotten more time, so that's just like a positive going forward. Of like, I mean, he could be
really
decent.
Yeah, that's a really good predictor for like just jump shot success is free throw shooting. So it's pretty positive that it's like, although like February's a small sample size with the amount of games, that's still pretty good. And I'll even go higher than 80% because I think he hit 2 of 2 today.
Yeah, we'll check that.
Just one less guy you can hack anyway. So that's, although we haven't really seen many teams do that, partly because I think teams realize that the Kings' offense is less efficient than a Rondo free throw, which is quite telling.
Yeah.
So the game after is Dallas, who they're 4-6 in the last 10, but they are on a 2-game winning streak. How do you feel about the Kings matching up with Dallas? I guess like they just have lots of guards, so maybe it kind of helps. They like to play like 3 guards, so that kind of helps in terms of how the Kings match up, like personnel wise. But then like the Kings like to get lit up by guards as well, so you just kind of give it more lottery balls for lighting up.
Yeah,
is that kind of how you feel? And again, like Dirk is like like a mid-rate, a jump shooting big. They just, the way in which the Kings defense is built, where like the bigs just play the paint and then like flee forward to contest shots, but just sag off so far. It's just like really easy for those bigs to like get volume shots, and like if they hit a couple, that seems to be kind of like what happens. Like even Dion Waiters was like hitting shots today. Not that he's a big, but he's pretty bad. He was like isoing. They were going to like Dion Waiters isolation plays in the 4th, or maybe it was even the 3rd. So that's how bad it gets.
Yeah, I mean, just with Dallas, I'm like even looking at the last game I played, like Darren Williams was 3 of 6 and 3. Wes Matthews was 2 of 4. And I mean, both of them cracked 20 points. Dirk was over 20. It's just, I mean, and that was the night when even JJ Barea wasn't shooting that well. So, I mean, even if you get 2 of those guys shooting well, I feel like Kings are going to have issues.
Then they don't have far to travel playing the Spurs the next game. That's probably going to be a loss. There's just too much talent on that team for them to even. I mean, maybe. Yeah, I don't really see a way in which they can beat them unless like Boogie just like basically that it's just Boogie has to completely destroy their front court. That's literally the only way the Kings are beating like any good teams. That's how the Kings beat the Thunder last time around. How they beat the Clippers. Basically, yeah, it's like just Boogie has to destroy the system.
Yeah. I mean, so look at the schedule. Like, we're talking about losses to potentially Dallas, Memphis. I might go the Kings' way. So 1 and 2.
I think they could probably beat the Mavs as well. Like, I think they should. I think that's not like a complete like I shouldn't even think about game. I guess they're both on the road, and got the Pelicans as well to finish off that road trip. They haven't played that great against the Pelicans this year, but I mean that should be a winnable game. I guess we'll see. Like, I think if they need to go realistically, if you want to keep talking about playoffs, they probably need to win at least 3 of these road games. 2 maybe can survive, but then you've got the Cavs after. So really, they need to win 3.
Well, and if we're talking about like an 0 and 3 or 1 and 3 or 1 and 4 trip or 1 and 3 trip, I mean, we're looking at potentially dropping below New Orleans and Denver.
Yeah. So, yeah. Although, I mean, Denver, if you lose 3, then you're on the same loss record as Denver. Should we not look at the teams behind and look at the teams ahead and keep optimistic?
Yeah.
So the Jazz have Toronto. Like, the Jazz have been pretty bad. They're like lost the last 3. So, although it was a really tight, fun game today against Boston. So they play Toronto next, then at Memphis, then at New Orleans. So they've got quite a long road trip because they've been in Boston today, and then versus Atlanta, then at Golden State. So you could probably say that there's probably maybe 2 games they should win, Memphis and New Orleans in that one. So that you could at least argue there's, and you could say they've got as much chance of beating Memphis as the Kings do. Or like maybe like they've got as much chance of beating Memphis as the Kings do the Mavs. Maybe I'd say that's kind of like fair, maybe a better chance. But I think that's probably a harder like just 5-game stretch. So they could maybe catch some ground. They're 3.5 games behind. So if you can make that 2 games. Going into the last 20 games, that's kind of workable. The Kings have, like, after this little trip, it gets a bit easier for them. And then the Rockets, they have New Orleans as well. Then they go on a road trip at Chicago, at Toronto, at Philly, at Boston. So you can probably say they have, like, I mean, Chicago are really hurt, but they're at least not just insane like Houston. I could see even New Orleans pulling off. Like, just Houston looks so bad. So that's probably like maybe 2-1 win there. So I think there is like room for the Kings to get back into the playoff mix.
But at the same time, like, Houston's bad, but I feel like James Harden can just torch Sacramento.
Yeah, but then we're not playing Houston. So.
My bad.
Yeah, that's just who Houston are playing. Okay. But luckily, yeah, the Kings aren't going to play Houston, so that kind of helps.
Yeah, but
if the Kings had to play Utah and Houston, like 25 games to get into the playoffs. Yeah, they're not getting there.
Yeah.
Should we quickly talk about all the former Kings getting waived?
Yes. It's just
Jason,
real quickly, just the former Kings who people have said in the past that, they've complained about DeMarcus Cousins not winning 30 games and talked about all the guys who have moved on from Sacramento and been a part of playoff contenders. Those guys,
yeah. So Jason Thompson waived for Barajal, and now he's going to Toronto, which is pretty good for both of them. I think he could actually help them. It means Scola's going to play less for them. If they play like a Cavs playoff series, he can play bench minutes when the Cavs go to Tristan Thompson and Mozgov. Like that kind of work that helps them. They kind of need, and they're going to have an all Kings 4 spot with Thompson and Pat. So that's maybe some good mojo there. Or maybe not. Maybe if gone too far then. Has Ray McCallum been waived yet, or are they waiting for Kevin Martin to get waived to then go to the Spurs to then waive Ray McCallum? So like a double Kings move.
I think Kevin Martin. I'm not sure what about McCallum, but I know Bano was also waived.
Yeah, Bano was waived hurt from the Heat. Then who else? Jim was on a 10-day contract, so that doesn't really count. Anyone else? Oh, Marcus Fulton was also waived. So you've almost got like a D-League team there.
There we go.
Ball D-League.
Let's just check in on Chuck Hayes.
But like Ray McCallum and Thompson were like starters for the last 2 years of the Kings. So I mean, it's for people that kind of rip Vlade, like he got like Rondo is better than Ray McCallum, and Kufos is better than Jason Thompson. Even though that Kufos really isn't playing that much.
Although the argument would be that Ray McCallum's not going to cost you what a Rondo extension is going to cost.
Oh, should we talk? Because there's one interesting thing with a Rondo extension. He can, with like the cap hold, so he can be extended and not use cap space if he takes a deal of 11 million.
What?
So because his cap hold will be, I think, 11 million. So it's kind of like it's similar to like bird rights. So you'd be able to sign a free agent into a space and then sign Rondo. So you'd have to keep like I think it's 12 million cap hold. But then you can sign him to about 11 million, 12 million and go into hard cap that way. So there's a way in which you can overpay Ryan Anderson, or like if you want to dream about Batum, which I think is kind of out of the question now, or a couple of guys, maybe like a wing defender somewhere, Courtney Lee or something like that. That could maybe there's a little bit of whether Rondo wants to take under that amount, but maybe he would take it to stay with the Kings. Or I mean, I don't really see who's going to be offering him a starting role anywhere, unless Conley leaves Memphis. Where else is there like a Brooklyn?
Yeah, I think there was some stuff about Rondo and the Knicks, but well,
and that he was saying he doesn't fit the triangle. So, but then they fired Fisher for saying that he never beat the triangle, or even though he beat that Lakers team. So yeah, he might not want to go there. But Brooklyn, Brooklyn will have money and no one to pay. They need a point guard, so maybe that's it. Maybe Chicago, if they move on from Derrick Rose, someone to overpay another bad point guard. I can't really think of anywhere else. Maybe Houston.
Well, there's another possibility.
Yeah.
The Lakers, if Byron Scott's still the coach.
I don't think. I mean, possibly. but they didn't do it this year. I thought they would have done it this year if they were going to do it anytime. So, but yeah, it'll just be interesting, kind of what happens with Rondo. I think like what this is his now 16th or something triple double, and there's been 13 losses.
God, that stat is so overrated.
Maybe it's like 18.
I'm just so tired of that stat now.
Yeah, I mean it's. Oh no, he didn't get a triple double because George Karl benched him when he had 9 rebounds.
Oh,
So yeah, sorry, we still lost though.
yeah.
But is there anything else you wanted to touch on?
Nothing.
Collison's been playing really well.
Yeah,
so that's been fun. He's been looking great. Ben was hitting open shots today, and James Anderson missed the easiest layup in the world and was defending Kevin Durant and playing point guard to end the game.
Did you listen to the last not Cowboy Kingdom podcast? I forgot the name, but with Ham and
no, not yet.
Yeah, it was after the trade deadline.
There was one today I haven't listened to. I listened to a different one though. One like this week. Why was there anything of note that you took from it?
I'm trying to. I should take notes. I'm trying to remember, but there did seem to be some legs to the whole Pau Gasol thing.
Like, it's. I don't know about. Yeah, this seems like kind of convinced, but maybe it's just noise to make it sound like they're active and trying stuff, and after a big name to kind of appease maybe the more general fan. Or
I know what we need to talk about, or just briefly. Vivek's comments about the minority owners.
Oh yeah, so that was Sacramento Bee interview, and he said if any minority owners are upset, I can write them a check. Yeah. Which is, I think, a like positive thing. It means he's like taking ownership of the situation and just being like, hey, people don't like it, like I'm not going anywhere type thing, which I think is like the right mentality and not to be pushed around by media. I think like, because like what other than bringing celebrities to games, Vivek has done nothing this year. So, and that's why you just see, and that's why it's kind of tiring as a Kings fan, where you just see the same like quotes and, oh, he's crazy, 4-on-5 jazz band stuff, because there's nothing new to say, or Stauskas or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think it's just interesting how it's like there's nothing new saying. I mean, you could say like not firing George Karl, but for what we know, that's more of a financial decision, or Vlade took the rap in the end. So
yep,
we'll see how that ends. Do you have anything on Vlade taking the rap for it?
Not.
Or just being like him just like taking the bullets because he can take them?
I kind of feel like in that position you need to take the bullets. So I mean, he's doing his job. He's being open, honest.
Yeah. So I think he's like, I just like the way he approaches media. That's probably like the thing with it now is like he's lied to the media, so you can't really take everything he says at face value anymore. Whereas before, like with the whole like Boogie Carl thing, I think you felt you could, and maybe like you can for the most part, but yeah, a bit more pinch of salt now with stuff Lottie says.
That's also kind of a good thing. Like he's learning as he goes.
Yeah, and it's interesting. He's like saying like I'm the GM when people, because there's kind of like the rumors they're going to hire a GM, and then he's kind of shut that down and said I'm the GM.
Yeah, and that was one thing on the podcast is they're talking about that, and they said they were interviewing Vlad. He said, I'm not looking for anyone, but he's a joke around. He said, do you guys want a job?
Yeah, and I think like they're not looking for anyone to be the GM, but I think his exact quote was like, I'm not looking for anyone to be the GM, but we're always looking for ways to improve the front office and the roster, or like and coaching staff, so kind of everywhere. I guess like we still haven't Cena, Vance Warburg replacement. So that's maybe why the defense hasn't changed. So maybe Carl has just not getting to do it and hope like just people forget. Who knows? I doubt it's going to happen on a road trip. So
yeah, we're not going to see it any like
probably ever.
Yeah, next year we'll see it. New coach will pick his staff.
One last. Should we talk about Seth Curry? Because I think like his 19-point game is getting way over publicized as if it was anything good. Like he hit some open shots, made some really bad plays. It was interesting. Like the broadcast, it was actually one of the few times I've watched the Kings broadcast, and they would praise like him by name anytime he made a hit and a shot. And then there was like 2 inbound passes he just threw out of bounds, and they wouldn't name him. They're just like, you can't have these terrible turnovers, but not name Seth. And he has some pretty bad defensive plays as well.
If he was DeMarcus Cousins' brother, Grant Napier wouldn't like him.
Yeah. If DeMarcus Cousins made those inbound passes, like you'd know about it. But yeah, he just kind of like, it's just interesting when you see kind of like favorites, and it's a shame every time he plays he gets hurt. And like I think he should play over Marco Bellinelli, but I think we need to like calm down a bit about like he's like, other than hitting like wide open shots, he kind of really hasn't done anything.
I think the saying for it is he's not as bad as George Karl thinks he is, but he's not as good as people are making him out to be.
And there's kind of the issue of like people like George Karl keeps saying he's the best perimeter defender when that's just a lie, and then not playing him. So if he obviously doesn't believe he's the best perimeter defender, otherwise he'd play him. Because if he's the best defender and he's a Curry and can hit open threes, you play that over Marco Bellinelli. So yeah, that's just a plain lie by Karl. And but I mean, these last 25 games, probably want him playing over Marco. I mean, I think you want Marco playing like 20 minutes. It's just like those, instead of Marco playing 36 minutes, give like 16 of those to Seth, and never play Marco at the 3, and you play Bennett those minutes you want to play Marco at the 3.
Yeah, I mean, just see what you have in Seth Curry. Give him 15, 20 minutes, just see what you got.
And he can opt out, so you kind of want to make him happy. I mean, maybe he won't opt out because it's like guaranteed money. But you'd assume he would be able to get at least that Pelicans offer again. But you'd probably want him to play and feel like, okay, I've got like a role going forward, and like I can like get some minutes here. Maybe if he keeps getting injured, he'll opt into the money because you're more likely to get. You're not really going to get guaranteed money if he keeps getting hurt. But that's just one thing to watch. I think James Anderson will opt into his money because he's not going to get that anywhere. And Caron Butler, I think he also has an opt-in. And
I think he's gone.
Yeah. He may get waived, or like stretched. So that's kind of one last thing to watch.
Yep.
And then just so maybe if they stretch him, they could start bringing in like D-League players because they haven't got an open roster spot. So that Caron Butler spot could be useful for getting some guys up from Reno because we haven't really seen anyone from Reno.
Yeah, do you want to see Ducon play at all this year?
He played the other day, didn't he, for Reno? Because he's been hurt a bit. But I think we recalled him from Reno the other day, and he went off big.
And he was sent back
against like team. I mean, there's just not really. He can only play the 4, and there's not really minutes there at the moment. Considering how, I mean, AC's taking a lot of minutes, so maybe you could play some for AC. But yeah, I don't really see the time for him. Maybe you can play some free against big teams, but no one really plays that big. Maybe against Memphis would be one time where you could hide him on Tony Allen. And with Gay out, that's kind of useful. But yeah, I think he's kind of like a 4 only.
So anyone else that could potentially come up? There's Stockton.
Andre Miller as well. He could he got waived as well. So
Yeah, he just got picked up by San Antonio.
Oh, did he? Oh, cool. So I guess they've got to waive someone then. So either I guess Ray McCallum if they're bringing in Andre Miller. So that's the second time Ray McCallum loses a job to the professor.
Yeah. I think.
Or maybe they let Matt Bonner go.
Yeah, so I mean, I don't know, like monitor who's getting waived, see if there's anyone.
I think
try something out.
Should we leave that until next week and hopefully at least 500? I think would be nice if they can get to 500. They still need to win. I think it's 9 games to cover the Vegas win-loss total they opened with. So that should happen, maybe.
Hopefully.
I think that 9 games as well to. I know they only need to win 7 games to pass the winning percentage of the Miami Dolphins, and then one of my Miami pod followers will get some free merchandise courtesy of an ill-advised follower of mine. So we just need 7 wins.
There you go.
And the Kings are at the 9th, so the Bucks with that win pass the Kings. So the Kings are now in the 9th spot of the draft, not the 10th. Just. So there's an interesting spot where, but maybe you see like Orlando, Milwaukee, tank at some point, and maybe even Washington tank to get that Phoenix pick, which is top 9 protected. Although they're on a 3-game winning streak, so you never know. But maybe if they get another injury to Wall or Beal or someone, then Beal goes down again. Maybe they tank, and that could push the Kings up to giving the Bulls a pick, which I think we kind of want in this class.
Yeah. I think that's about it.
Yeah.
Okie dokie then. So just want to say thank you to everyone for listening to the Sac Off podcast. We will be back soon once again talking about the Kings and the sadness they leave for everyone. So thank you for listening.
At least the next week there only start at 1 a.m. for me, or 1:30. So I'll be sleeping.
Yeah,
no sleep for me today. I'm not going to sleep because the Kings will bloody tag Olivia Vernon if I go to sleep. So I've got to stay awake, keep my eye on them, make sure they don't do anything stupid. Only 10 hours, I think. Oh no, way more than that. 14 or something, 16. Anyway, we'll get there.
Yep. All right.
See you. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.